I frequently find things in the newspaper that ignite a poem, and this is the same thing here. You might have read about this. Actually, the lines right below the title are not from the newspaper, but the story is. And I entitled this poem, Meeting the Impresario. And the lines below that are from a book by Ingrid Clendenin. It's entitled Reading the Holocaust. And the lines are, if the Holocaust were indeed to be accepted as unique, it would risk falling out of history. This is a human interest story. To some, a cut below Auschwitz, or another suicide bomber, or tank commander who sends 3 rockets through the passenger window, assassinating the person the bomber looked up to. But Reinhardt's story is in the same edition of the newspaper as the tank commander's, only buried because no one knew him as a terrorist or a fascist, but merely a person who ran a retirement home for big cats. Baby wild animals make the public open up their wallets, said the nightly news anchor. Fish and Game found 69 dead animals on his property, among them 9 tigers and 2 leopards, 10 to 14 days old, tethered in the crawl space under the house, and 58 cubs in the freezer. He had a wife, a prepubescent son, and had never worked in the known chambers of horror, did not violate a single human right, never twisted a single human arm, never squeezed a neck. Some say he is one of a kind, marooned, his actions existing in some other tongue without a known grammar. Finally, we allow his soul to burst the imagination, and we fall back, the sky knocked out of us, denying ourselves, denying the world we are capable of. I'll read a few new ones. Actually, This is not absolutely new. It's called The Intimacy of Dentistry. Some of us have sex without noticing, like the way some dentists can work a drill with such speed, with a wish to be done with it. To say little of the poor-mouthed person, mouth agape, who hopes to fly up from the chair, off the branch, out of the bed, their breath, and drool and fear, not easy to endure, even by the angels of the tooth. That said, the acted upon can give off dreamy and mysterious thoughts, as wavy as heat in summer, especially the fantasies of mature patients. Like one day they'll walk in and the terrible boom will be lowered, a declaration about the death of, the fall of all my teeth, the defeat, utter collapse, destruction, the surrender of one's frontline soldiers, the defection of his canines, the capture of his rear molars. All will be lost with no prospect of regrouping or outflanking. And all that will be left will be to redraw the map, penciling in the faint and ancient art of tearing and chewing, and only the bellows of a face, cheeks, and the collapsed army of blow your house down will remain. One becomes a shell of his youth then, the shining dominoes, the glittering marbles in the pouch, that animal self no longer full of sex or the ripping of meat, the evaporation of gleaming aggression, a softer smile on his face, a seeming acceptance to be quieter. Who would have thought you could live this long, to wear out the army of the front lines, and now to magically pay to reseed yourself with a clump of pines or a row of corn, while grandchildren, fierce fledglings, pups, begin to rise through the fire and smoke, so ready to bite the world. So, let's see, 2 more. Stories, and there are stories. That's the title. There are stories beneath, actually, this is sort of, I don't know what I mean. There are stories beneath stories, where stories bury stories that have been lost, like stories too hot to handle, and the abandoned stories, then found stories, without looking, invaluable stories, not understood, but placed in boxes, stories bound in sheets of bubble wrap. So here's one I simply heard driving up Cedar Street from my 6th table tennis lesson, where I couldn't unlock my wrist to hit a backhand to save my life. That's what the coach's eyes said, holding me at the elbow like a flirtatious teacher might do with a young co-ed. I sweated in this story, and when it was over, I walked chilled to the car and accelerated up the hill, listening to the NPR producer describe his interview with a middle-aged schizophrenic woman who stopped taking her meds and told the deacon in her church that she'd been visited and ravished by the Archangel Gabriel. The next day she said she'd been visited by the Archangel Michael and that she'd had sex with him too. And the following night she had sex with both of them at the same time. She said the deacon in the church insisted that she start taking her medication and not entertain any more angels. But here's where the story gets complex. As she did what the deacon said for a few nights, then confessed that she stopped taking her meds again because she was lonely and liked seeing the angels. That's for real. I heard that story. Okay, this is the last one back. I don't know if you have to be, I don't know what you have to be to get this first, the title of this poem. I don't know if you have to be older or Jewish or what. Not neither. But the title is, All Right Already! And that's actually Jack Penn, who of course was Jewish. But, you know, All Right Already, you know what that means. Shit or get off the pot, my cousin Herb liked to say. I just started school, so this was a shocking directive. Shit, pot, get off. Herb's hands always smelled deliciously from the gasoline pumps he fixed near Cleveland. As I became more of an abstract thinker, I began to understand what Herb was driving at. He knows what he thinks, he'd say, or don't be so mealy-mouthed, Steve, so wishy-washy, non-committal, or don't mince words. And finally, he would sweep everything away, any doubt. He who hesitates is lost. So, what Herbie left out, what didn't get finished, what you didn't decide to do, what you weren't certain about, builds another kind of house. One with a door that a wolf can blow open and walk right in. One that isn't completely safe. It's a house built on a fault, a dozen unpaid bills throbbing on the counter, where an honest-to-God letter goes unanswered, where the dog sheds on the bed, and the message machine flashes uncontrollably. This is the house where the juggler lives, where Keats once knocked on the door, where your mind needn't be made up like a hotel bed, where uncertainty is a pale green neon sign that blinks quietly as a firefly.